Welcome to the start of a new anime review series. This is The Otherware Altair Master. And unlike in the case of the previous anime I just finished reviewing today, which was the brilliant Healer Lives New Life in Darkness, this was completely all dubbed. Yep. And it just started airing just this year. And you're like, wow, Nick, you're covering like a lot of series come out just this year alone. Probably because basically I come across some really good anime this year so far. Oh yeah, nothing against the previous years, nothing against that. Just I'm basically come across just really good anime this year. Like anime that I have thoroughly been enjoying. That I never would have thought basically getting this many. Like, here's the thing about this year per se. The only kind of technically non-fantasy anime I've covered this year have been Dandadan, Dragon Ball Daima. Why is no one remembers that kind of is fantasy, but it's more modern day that one. Let's see. I'm the Lord of Intergalactic Empire, Yandere Dark Up Chasing of the World, My Hero Vigilantes, Demon Lord 2099. Probably Apothecary Diaries, so I'd say about 8 of the, as of currently, 21 anime I've covered this year alone. And some of you might be asking, Nick, how many anime did you cover last year? At the rate I'm going, I might cover a lot more than usual. Yes. I covered last year a total number of 27 anime. Yep, and out of all the anime covered this year so far, at least I think like 1 or 2 of them have been over 20 episodes. The only ones I've covered this year more than 20 episodes have been Dragon Ball Daima, Firein, I Left My Area Adventure to join my former students to explore dungeons, and the Apothecary Diaries. Yes, only 4 of them have been over 20 episodes. Everything else has mostly been like 12 or some cases 13 episodes. You're like, wow. Now, some might be asking the question like, how many anime have you watched that are specifically manga based? Or manga based. Well, they're only manga and they're light novel. There's Dandadan, Rare Adventure of the World, Headhunters of the World. Let's see. Firein, Walk Adventure Japan myself. And that's it. Only 5 of them. Yes. Most everything else I covered this year, mostly based upon light novels. You're like, really? Yeah, really. That's 100% completely true. And this is quite interesting, this one. Where this second one in a row I've covered, where the main character was kicked out of his party. Unlike being a healer, like in the case of the last one, happened twice for that one, this one is a chore boy. Yep. Oh yeah, and the guy who leads the party is a dick. Like in the case of all the other ones I've seen where this trope happens. So, by the way, this also is the first series I've come across where the first episode's title is really long. Yes, I have never counted the title this long. As a matter of fact, the final episode is longer, has more words than that one has this one. So, this is how the first episode, the guy in charge of chores with low self-esteem turned out to actually possess incredible skills. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 words. Yeah, 16 words. Usually it's like 5 or 6, but never 16. You're like, what the heck? Yeah. By the way, I did not read a light novel for this one. I just basically I went straight to the manga because I figured that'd be the fastest way to actually get through it quickly and then basically start watching anime. This matter of fact I did was mostly finished with the brilliant the previous anime I just finished up. This one basically, like in the case last one, just for the manga. And there's nothing really wrong with that. Yes, I do read light novels. I still read them, but they sometimes take a while to get through. That's why I just went straight to the manga to go through this quickly. So I guess I really want to start this anime. So, our characters we have here. First we have our main character, Kurt. Kurt Rockhorns. Yes, that's seriously his name. Though the way the character is, he's kind of like the main protagonist of the last series I watched, plus Beast Tamer. And also, from Old Country Master Swordsman, where the character thinks not that strong, but they're actually really strong. And like everybody is like so perplexed a lot of the time the stuff he does over the course of like a single episode. He's voiced by Karen Strange. He's kicked out of his party because, it can only be 4-person party apparently. Yes, a 4-person party. And they think he's dead away. So the leader is Ganova, voiced by Christian Threston. There's also a beautiful sorceress in the group named Marithas, voiced by Kate Oten. And there's another woman named Bandana, voiced by Morgan Leah. I thought this was kind of interesting for a woman's name, Bandana. Why? Because she wears bandana in her head, so it's called Bandana? I have never heard of a woman ever called this in any anime I've ever covered. Bandana. I've heard other names like Priestess, High Elf Archer, Witch, but Bandana? Seriously? Yes, of course, there's also Bola, Bulma's daughter from Dragon Ball Super. Yeah, that's the name of a piece of clothing, but bandana's over your head, not your body. Good gosh. So, despite the fact he's actually really good, they think he's a bit deadweight because he doesn't know the combat skills, so he's kicked out of the party. So he's like, need a job. So he goes to a temp agency, which I have worked at a temp agency before. Now, the whole thing of temp work in anime, this is something that I very rarely come across. It's not as common as other things, but so he goes to this place to apply for a job. The place looks like basically like a guild hall because the people who work there wear guild reception uniforms for some reason. Not the ones seen guild receptionists where it's like those ones. These more look like the ones seen. Off the top of my head, the only anime I've seen where guild reception uniforms look like the way they do in this anime was actually in Izuru Chiguro's Dungeon. That's where it's very similar to that one. So they also have a clipboard, which is a bit unusual. Of course, last show they have freaking magic guns. Yes, seriously, guns in a fantasy anime. That's something you very rarely ever see. You also don't count Apothecary Diaries as a fantasy like this one because that's an ultra version of Ancient China. That one. That's why I don't count it as part of that one because that's more semi-realistic. While this is basically fantasy, which yes, I know for a fact that I've covered a lot of fantasy anime this year. Like, there's not many non-fantasy anime I've not covered this year. I mean, the first one this year is Dawn of Dawn, show set in present day. There's Dragon Ball Daima, obviously. Demon Slayer takes place in the frickin' future. My Hero Academia takes place in present day. And Apothecary Diaries is basically like, of course, also Yandere Dark Elf Chasing the World, and of course, the Apothecary Diaries. So most of the anime this year tends to be either isekai based or fantasy based. The reason why I'm covering so much because I really enjoy this genre. That's simply the reason for it. I enjoy it. The only one I was not really the biggest fan of was Read Over Healer, and I was kind of asked to take a look at it. I like the animation, but I just didn't like the character. Some of the character, I hated the main character because the guy was a freaking rapist. Like, how can we get into an anime where the main character rapes he rapes a princess? How is that interesting to watch for an anime? And you can see if you have a chance to watch a show, you can see why there's only one season for the show. One. Because of how freaking dark that show is. This one, I don't mind this one. This is light. This is very, the girls like the main character, which I do like that. I do always like the aspect in some anime I come across. But the only anime this year I've covered where that was actually recommended to me was Dandadan. Firing, I was suggested but not recommended. Aside from those two are the ones I was recommended. Mostly put a lot of these other ones I just found. Like, if you're going to ask me personally, what anime that I've watched this year did not come out this year? Dandadan, Dragon was the start of last year. Firing, I'm the Villainous, I'm Ten Final Boss. My Hero Academia that I covered this year. Did not come out this year. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. I'd say about 5. Not bad per se, yes. So, basically, then he gets hired. Well, everything is all G-Rank for him. Then he picks up this magic, like, what appears to be a sandbag. But apparently, later on, it's revealed this actually is meant to measure magic. The heavier it is how higher magic is. That's every episode 2. So then he's getting a job working construction. Fixing a wall with concrete. Which, okay, the foreman tells him, I'll give you 3 hours working this wall. And he basically gets a lot done in 3 hours. They're like, what the heck? What is this? What? You finished all this work in 3 hours? Damn, dude! Here's your pay, come back tomorrow. And then he basically finishes up half the freaking wall. After 3 days, he's let go. Not because he's incompetent, but because, well, people need to work, and that's perfectly reasonable. He took a lot of people's, unintentionally took a lot of people's job by fixing this wall, so he was, like, that's perfectly fine. And, like, okay, he has another job that he meets up with, of course, a dark-skinned woman who is an adventurer, who apparently used to work with her own family, and her name is Alicia, voiced by Aaron Laquise. Yes, where she basically is, well, because the fact that he has experience being a miner, he does mention he's from like this village up in the mountains, which probably no one knew there was villages up in the mountains. Like, I guess they're that so much outside, so then of course, basically, like, they just mine in this one area because he needs to pay taxes, and finds all these gems, which he uses his hands, thanks to magic, makes magic crystals. Like, wow, these look so freaking good. So it takes to 2 different appraisers. Second one basically is like so exclusively. So, by the way, for that first job, for the pay for that one overall, for 3 days he got paid 200 pieces of gold. And like, what the heck? And then, of course, with Alicia, he get paid just for the few days. By the way, he also bought a house. And he also started a freaking mine, which apparently they do explain. Like, okay, so apparently in Mithra, where he is like so common. But where the area they're in, it's not that common. And of course, you look for orichalcum. Of course, she was gone for like 1 day. Look, there's this magic house he just built in 1 day. He's like, how much sleep you get? 6 hours. Really? You get this done in 6 hours? Like, well, he's a fast worker. And he dug out this whole mountain. Of course, she was not surprised. But lighted with a special lit moss, which was really cool. And, like, yeah, Mithril, and of course, orichalcum. And, of course, all the way through. And, of course, eventually he forms an agreement with the local lord to keep the tunnel there, which they're very happy with the tunnel being there. At least it cuts down travel time. And then from that job, he got paid 498 pieces of gold. And like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of gold. And then he gets another job working as a cook for this Meister. And he goes to the place. And, by the way, the whole thing, like, farmer like, okay, I have to pay me only in this thing and keep it a secret. Because Kurt basically, because apparently the guy is like so good at his job that apparently everyone's shocked. He had to keep it secret for something, otherwise everybody would be exploiting him. So he basically works for this Meister. He meets this young girl who is the assistant, and very cute little girl who's an elf, which apparently he doesn't notice the fact she's an elf. I know she's an elf right away just by her freaking ears. Yes, her pointy ears in the show. Yes. I believe the name is Michelle, and she's voiced by, okay, Latitit Monkey Diaz. Okay. I believe she's 80, this little girl. So, then she, looking around the place where is his chef uniform, he just happens to walk into a room with this beautiful blonde girl. Yes. And who is this girl? Ladatius Hemoris, and she's voiced by Hayden Davio. She's revealed a little later to actually be the third princess of the kingdom, and apparently she walked in when she's basically topless. He doesn't see her breast per se, but he does notice the curse mark on her belly, and he does ask before he touches her that can he touch the curse mark. She says sure. He touches it. Then of course she's hungry, makes porridge. And then basically we see Memiko, who is actually the person who is the Meister here. So then, like, okay, don't trust herself for poison because she's, of course, she's a princess. She eats it, gets so convulsing, like, oh, maybe it's poison. It's like, no. Unintentionally, Kurt just cured her of her curse. Which, like, was swore thing. And of course, later on, they mentioned, oh, yeah, try it again. Like, no, try something else. So, then later on, just by sheer coincidence, like, okay, so Yolanda basically is mentioning to the girl reception, like, oh, Kurt. And, like, they both think the same guy. And then she meets up with Momoko. And, like, Kurt did that too? Damn. And while this is going on, the leader of his former party decides to make a dick out of himself by apparently criticizing food, smashing plates, refusing to pay the bill, and he apparently just walks out because he thought the food was disgusting. He doesn't know, where's that meat Kirk will let him go? Oh, it's your belly. And, like, go get Kurt. Of course, then, of course, he's declared he's basically on the run. So Bandana just happens to run into Kurt. And, of course, the scene is very similar to what I saw in the manga. Like, very happy to see him. Of course, can't exactly join our party besides Dragon Fang because they're looking home. But good stuff here. Like, I'm like 2 episodes into the show, and I'm hooked. It's amazing, this show. Now, if you're really curious, like, has there been a show I come across where the main character thinks, aside from this one, where people are just shocked about how OP he is? Of course, like I mentioned, the brilliant healer who lives New Life in Darkness. From Country Monkey Master Swordsman, obviously. Even to give us Worthy Crafts, I'm actually the strongest. I mean, just a few this year alone basically just has that concept of how the main character is stronger than everybody thinks he is. Mm-hmm. What about last year? Chilling away with cheap powers, that's one. Someone got stronger for my farming skills? Yeah. Not many per se, but I do appreciate the fact when I come across series like this. There's one show I need to finish up here. I need to finish up soon, maybe soon. Peter Grill and the Philosopher. But the thing is, they haven't had a season quite a while, so I might come to that soon. But yeah, that's been pretty much it particular video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next time we have a comment corner, and then it's back to the show. Okay, thanks, Phil. Bye.